Hello, welcome to the Ghosts of Harrenhal. My name's Simon.
And I'm Mackelly.
Thank you for joining us for episode 237 of our chapter-by-chapter book review of A Song of Ice and Fire by George Martin. Today we're discussing chapter 11 of A Feast for Crows, which is called The Kraken's Daughter.
As always, we're going to chat about the chapter and try not to spoil any future plot points for you, unless you have the spoiler tier, and hopefully we're going to provide you some entertainment along the way.
We will summarise what happened, discuss our thoughts on it, provide some useful background, compare it to the television show, indulge in a little pedantry, and cover some relevant news and listener correspondence. Be sure to check out the show notes. They'll provide some additional information about the characters and geography of this chapter. How are you, sir?
I'm doing all right. I sat still. It's kind of one of my rules of thumb is to not stop moving. Don't sit down until it's time to sit down. And
okay.
But Molly came home from the gym and we sat and watched this YouTuber that we watched together called Danny Gonzalez. And that was about a 20-minute long video. And several times I could feel my eyes starting to fade a bit. And I was like, oh, no, I gotta be on here very soon.
That's one of the many ways that we're very different, because you are an insta napper. You can nap like that.
I could fall asleep like if I let myself, but I really try not to stop moving. So as a rule, I don't nap, but I could if I stopped, if I laid down or something in the middle of the day.
I am completely incapable of taking a nap. Can't do it at all. Just never do it. Just never do it. Never sleep on an airplane.
No, me either. I wish I could. Oh, I wish I could sleep on an airplane. That would make flying, the hell that is flying, slightly more tolerable if I could sleep on an airplane.
So, Carson's got me hooked on a new app, which is called Merlin. I don't know if this is a worldwide app, but it listens to bird calls and it identifies the birds from the bird calls.
Oh, I have not heard of this. So if it's worldwide, it skipped me.
Well, yeah, I don't know if it's worldwide, but it you get a regional package. So you identify where you are, and it sends a package of your birds, so you don't have to have a database of every bird on Earth.
Right. Good idea.
But I went out and I recorded for 8 minutes, and it found 16 different birds in my back garden.
Wow. That's really cool.
I know.
Were most of
I was
them
very happy.
Various types of sparrows?
There was a song sparrow. He's very common. He's common to my back garden. I don't know how common he is. He might be the only one in existence for all I know, but he sings all the time. The one that dings the most is the cardinal, the red one.
Oh, huh.
Because they're quite loud and quite obvious. And that's the other thing. It helps you identify them. Now I can identify the song sparrow, the cardinal, the mourning dove. Actually, I knew the mourning dove before, but I've learned the eastern towhee. Don't ask me to do impressions, but I do know an eastern towhee. And the other thing is, it also shows you what that bird looks like. Because, I mean, typically I was looking around and all I could see was trees.
Right.
But it shows you pictures of the birds, so now you know what they look like too, you see.
So does it do it live? Thing. Like, as a bird is chirping, it's like, this bird is chirping right now.
So when you press record, it'll start with a sort of blank screen, and then it'll put a bird up on the screen when it hears one. And then if it hears that bird again, it will light up again.
Oh, neat.
So you'll end up with a list of birds, and they'll be lighting up at different times. It's really, it's a cool little app.
Yeah, sounds it. Might have to give it a try.
16, I couldn't believe it. I was like, I was thinking about growing up in the UK again. I told you about the UK has no wildlife at all.
Right.
There can't be 16 species of birds in the UK. It's just there's probably struggling to get 16 birds of any kind. Seagulls, sure, there's lots of those, but everything else, pigeons, I suppose, we have those.
Yes. Well, that's pretty neat. What did you say it was called? Merlin?
Merlin, like the magician.
The magician?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
I will check that out. I like it.
My the other story I've got is, I don't know how, my brother was very keen that this story make it to the pod. I've told you before, the family call is kind of a little, they're all pitching. They're
right. They're giving you their Shark Tank elevator speech as to why their story should get on our airwaves.
They're so needy.
Who holds the power but you?
This is kind of my mum's story. She went to a neighbour's funeral, a neighbour who I knew as a child. I grew up with her kids. They're contemporaries of mine. And so I remember this lady very well, and it's sad that she died.
Yeah.
She was in her upper 80s. But her name was Muriel Larder. That was her name, Muriel Larder. And known as Mew. Everyone called her Mew.
Okay.
And
I like
so
it.
I remember Mew Larder very, very well. But what I didn't know, and what nobody knew, including my mother, was what Mew Larder's maiden name was. Mew Larder's maiden name was Virgin.
Virgin?
Virgin. I've never heard of that as a
No,
name.
me either.
My brother liked it because it turned out she was the 7th of 9 children. He was like,
misleading.
Exactly.
Huh.
At some point, no one's buying that anymore.
That's I'd never heard of that as a last name.
No,
Either.
neither had I.
Of course, I have never heard of Mackelly as a first name, so who am I
that's very true. Yeah.
to point out such things about anyone?
But there is a difference because first names are given, but
True.
last names
Yes.
are inherited. You can't really.
Yes, that is a good distinction right there.
Yeah.
So I've been working hard on getting my yard work done. The mulching and the putting down of the pine straw and getting the yard set up for the summer to just destroy everything.
You should send me a list of these things, Mackelly.
All right. To see what ones you're checking, what ones you aren't.
I think we all know the answer is none of them. Unless
stay-
mowing's on there. I do mow the yard.
As long as you
That's
stay
all I
away
got.
from the poison ivy. You don't need any more
Yes.
interactions with poison ivy. Anyway, so two of the tasks that I just mentioned are mulching, putting down fresh mulch, and putting down pine straw. Well, my neighbor in my current house, not the one that called me Michaela, but my current neighbor, they're not what you might call yard workers. They're one of those folks that just don't tend to they probably cut their grass 2 to 3 times in a summer.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
They make me look hardworking.
Their grass was so high going into this week that a car parked next to their yard, and the grass was as high as the top of their car. It looked like actually a wheat field. And eventually someone came to cut it, and those poor people were out there for so long. Anyway, what they have a side yard that connects to my yard, and it runs along the side of my street, and I maintain it because otherwise it would just be full of overgrown weeds, and you know me, I could not drive past it every day and just have to deal with that. So
so as you look at your house, it's the neighbours to your left you're talking about.
Yes.
Oh, interesting.
With that little
Okay.
fence that it's
Yes.
Then there's just like some natural area between the fence.
But that
and the
fence
street.
gives you a little bit of separation from them.
Yes. And I use that fence for my covert operations. So I go in there, I go into that natural area and I pull weeds and I spray weeds. And every spring I put down pine straw. But I try to do it when I can see that they're not on their back deck, because they have dogs that are in that side yard. Anyway, so I noticed that nobody was on the back deck. So I was like, okay, now's my chance. I saved 5 bales of pine straw for this side project. So I get up there and I'm kind of crouched down a little bit so that there's no awkward eye contact as I'm tending to their property. And as I'm doing it, I hear a voice, and I'm wearing earbuds. So I'm like, where's that coming from? I pull it out, and it's my neighbor from across the street, not the one that owns this house, but my neighbor from across the street. And she's like, hey, what you doing? And I'm like, shh. What do you think I'm doing? I'm putting pine straw down. And she's like, do they know you're doing that? And I was like,
Oh,
quit
man.
shouting. And I was like, no, they don't. Oh, well, it looks really good. Thank you for doing it. And I was like, you're welcome. Now, would you please lower your voice and go away? So my covert op was really blown there.
That's like a comedy movie.
Yes,
I
it
love
was. So I did get it done, and there was no awkward moment where I'm putting it down and I look up over the fence and there's eyeballs peering over at me. So,
All right.
all right.
Well, let's get down to business. How did we leave the daughter of the Kraken? Well, so that presumably would be Asha Greyjoy. She was reaving the western shore of the north, taking Deepwood Motte and trying to convince her idiot brother Theon to abandon his tenuous hold on Winterfell. Ramsay Bolton made short work of loosening that very same hold. Since then, her father, King-ish Balon, has died in a mysterious fall. Mackelly, why don't we give the summary of this one?
He was king in his own mind. The Iron Throne might have disagreed, but...
Yeah.
Anyway, so Asha Greyjoy stands in her uncle's great hall gazing at those in attendance and realizes it's not enough. Not even close to the number of supporters she'll need to remove her uncle Euron Crowseye from the Seastone Chair. Most in the hall reside here on Harlaw, where her uncle Rodrik Harlaw rules. She sees the sigils of the stone trees, the Volmarks, Myers, and the many various sigils of the factions of House Harlaw, but the lone Botley sigil is the only house present not from the island of Harlaw.
Her uncle Lord Rodrik Harlaw's high seat is empty, and Asha assumes he's left the feast to take up his favourite pastime, reading. Dubbed the Reader, Lord Rodrik is a passionate and voracious consumer of books. The largest of the towers here in Castle 10 Towers is dedicated to his book collection. Asha confirms with Rodrik's ancient steward Threetooth that her uncle is indeed in his library, then commands that the woman find comfortable lodgings and warm food for Asha's captives. Asha has brought the Lady Glover and her children from Deepwood Motte. One of the children is a baby and is in need of a wet nurse.
Asha also asks about the whereabouts of her mother, Lady Alanis. A bed in the widow's tower. Asha still can't reconcile that her frail, sick mother is alive while her strong, driven father is dead. Asha is skeptical, recalling the story that Balon fell when a rope bridge broke. She decides that tomorrow is a better day to visit her mother. She knows Alanis will ask about Theon, and Asha can't bear to deliver the news of his death right now.
Asha climbs the book tower to find her uncle. He tells her that her mother believes that Balon was murdered, but that he is willing to accept the story of Balon's accidental fall at face value. When Asha reminds him of the convenient timing of Uncle Euron arriving the very next day after just 3 years in exile, Rodrik is willing to admit that the timing is dubious.
Asha asks where the rest of her supporters are, and is told that many ships' captains are already making for Old Wyk. Her uncle Aeron Damphair has called a Kingsmoot, the first in about 4,000 years. Of her fourth uncle Victarion, Rodrik is unsure. He knows the man's been told of Balon's death and the Kingsmoot, but that is all.
Rodrik hopes the Kingsmoot will be peaceful. As an educated man, he's aware of the bloodshed Euron Grey Iron unleashed on his contenders during his Kingsmoot thousands of years ago, and he can't help but recognise how close his name sounds to Euron Greyjoy. He urges his niece not to go to Old Wyk.
Asha won't miss the Kingsmoot. She doesn't want to spend her life wondering what might have happened if she'd made her case for Queen of the Iron Islands. She has the strongest case. But Rodrik is frank with her. A woman will not be chosen to rule. Instead, Rodrik offers to make her his heir to 10 Towers if she will stay away from the Kingsmoot. Asha remains undeterred.
She leaves the company of her uncle to return to her men. However, on her way she meets an old friend. Well, more of an old friend with benefits. Christopher Botley. Triss was fostered by Asha's mother after Theon was taken as a Stark ward. Asha and the boy fumbled about each other as youths until they were discovered and Triss was sent away. The boy is now a man and the rightful heir to Lordsport, since Euron killed the man's father, Swain Botley, for not bending the knee.
Triss tells her that Euron is buying loyalty with the treasure he returned with from his exile. Asha says the botmen are all of small account. Triss affirms that he is still her man, and always will be. In fact, he's still in love with her and offers to marry her. Asha is less than interested. She's got bigger goals than bearing his sons.
She tells him to find another woman. He's too sweet for her. She walks away, but Triss grabs her by the arm. In a flash, Asha has her dirk at his throat and commands him to release her. She's his queen, not his wife. He'd better remember that.
Okay.
New
POV.
Yes, yes. I find Asha an interesting character as well. I'm glad she's a POV.
Yes, I agree. I agree. As you were reading,
However, go on. Sorry.
as you were reading about Euron and Euron, I was
Yeah.
also thinking of Euron from the Night's Watch, and then Osha and Asha, and I think
Yeah.
maybe either George Martin was intentionally trying to confuse us, or he was going through a spell where he was just like, "Oh, let's just name them all the same, close enough."
Yeah. Yeah. So for those who aren't reading, Euron Greyjoy is Euron, but this ancestor who did a Kingsmoot and then killed all his rivals was Euron Grey something
Iron,
else, wasn't
gray
it?
iron.
Grey Iron. Euron Grey Iron, and that was Uron. So not quite the same name, but
Yes,
like Rodrik, the similarities are striking.
yes, yes, they are.
Yeah. So Dampere called for this Kingsmoot, and that call has been taken up by other priests.
Right.
So the word has spread of it, and so basically, I mean, it's all every captain gets a vote, and so all the captains are descending on Old Wyk for this Kingsmoot. But I will say, I don't think that Dampere. I think Dampere wanted it to be sort of like a free and fair election, but I don't think he intended to put his brother Euron on the Seastone Chair.
Agreed. If you remember from the end of his chapter, the prophet, which was I
The
think chapter
prophet.
2 or something like that,
Uh-huh.
at the end of the chapter, he knew about Euron claiming the Seastone Chair. He then heard about Asha also making claim to the Seastone Chair. And then at the very end of the chapter, he told his followers, "We'll have a Kingsmoot." And the followers picked up the call and went off and spread the word. But before that, he was thinking about Balon's heir. He had actually had a conversation about Balon's succession plan. And Balon wanted Asha to succeed him.
Right.
But Aeron, personally rejected the idea of Asha being the queen of the Iron Islands. He thought Euron was ungodly, and he just generally very much dislikes his older brother.
Right.
He thought Theon was a weakling, so eliminating all those contenders, he thought the only obvious choice was Victarion.
Victarion, right.
But Victarion was away at Moat Cailin. That was what he
Right.
was tasked by his brother Balon.
And according to this chapter, we don't know what he's up to. Word has been sent, but he
Right.
has not responded in any way. And so whether he'll even show up for the Kingsmoot or not is unknown.
I was thinking possibly, as Victarion was the furthest away from the islands for this debate about who should be the king or queen of the Iron Islands, possibly the Kingsmoot gives him time for an arrival and to build a following, that we're going to have an official vote rather than everybody just fight it out and Victarion arrives late and misses the fight.
Moat Cailin is in the neck, right?
Yes.
And there was I think there was an offhand comment in this chapter that they are being pestered by
Bog devils, as they call them.
The bog devils, right?
Yes.
Meaning
the Cranogmen.
The Cranogmen, exactly, yes. So I wonder if his hands are full and he can't actually leave. I wonder if it's not easy for him to leave, even if he wanted this.
Yeah, that could be.
But the one thing else, so coming back to what I was saying, Dampere didn't mean to put Euron on the throne, but I think this Kingsmoot might very well do it. Because if what Tris Bartley tells her is true, that Euron is A, killing people who won't bend the knee to him,
right,
and B, bribing the rest of them, that doesn't leave a lot of wriggle room for third-party candidates such as Asha.
It's true, it does not. No, yeah. When he made the call for the Kingsmoot, we were in his head. We didn't have any knowledge in his head that he knew about all the riches, the treasure that Euron had acquired in his ship. So, he overlooked that fact possibly.
Right, and one aspect of the Kingsmoot, I don't know what the nature of the Kingsmoot is, but I imagine it's a public vote where you say, as a captain, you stand up and say, that does not work in anyone's favor but Euron's, because If it's a private vote, you might tell Euron, "Oh, I'm your man," and then vote for Asha and hope she wins. But if you've got to stand up and say it, it's hard to look the nutcase in the eye and tell him you're voting for someone else.
Yes, it is. Yeah, you're right. A private vote might bode better for for the more peaceful candidate anyway.
Yeah.
And in fact,
everything's relative in the Iron Islands.
Yes,
I mean, she's just a reaver and a lunatic.
Rodrik, her uncle, says, some of the people who are eating in my hall right now, when the voting starts, might turn and vote for Euron because they might get swept up in everything. Indeed. Or maybe they get bribed off or something.
It's like, you probably don't know this because you don't go to the office very much, but earlier this year in the office, we had a vote for what snacks should be available in the break room.
Oh,
and
yes.
We had 4 categories of snacks, and we had pairs in each category. And then the vote was you put a ticket into a drum, but the drums were clear, and you could see how many tickets were in the drums.
Oh, huh.
So very quickly, in one of them, I really liked A, not B. But the B bucket was way fuller. So my vote in the A bucket was just a waste of time.
Right. Yes.
And to prove that this was kind of like the vote was rigged, not rigged, but twisted by the fact that people could see the contents of the buckets. In another building, the buckets were not opaque, were opaque. And in that one, they got a very different result on that particular vote.
Oh, well, isn't that interesting?
Mm-hmm. It was almost 50-50 when they couldn't see the vote. In my building, which is the biggest building, it was like 70-30.
Huh. Wow, that's actually pretty cool. I mean,
yeah,
not that you lost. If we had that part's not cool.
If we had statistics, we could run it on that kind of thing. If our company knew what to do with statistics.
If only.
Asha does have one thing going for her. She's the only scion of Balon Greyjoy. I mean, Euron has his blood. He is his brother, but she's the only living child, as far as we know, of Balon. And if Damper would voice the thing that you mentioned, which is that, by the way, Balon wanted her.
Right.
That might swing a few votes, but maybe Damper will stay out of it,
Yeah. With there being 3 candidates that are Greyjoys, you run the risk of Asha and Victarion splitting their votes and not creating a large enough section to beat Euron. So, it would be really good if the 2 of them could discuss and say, okay, you take it, I'll throw my votes your way. We'll see how that plays out.
Yeah, we'll see. So Gwyneth's Harlaw is a very obvious clue as to how things might go for Asha, I think.
Right, yeah.
Women get overlooked for inheritance all the time in the Seven Kingdoms, the exception being Dawn.
Right.
And actually, Rodrik reminds me somewhat of...
Doran Martell.
Doran Martell, exactly. I was struggling with his name. Rodrik reminds me of Doran Martell because a thoughtful reader, sort of...
Yes.
Surrounded by people who want to fight everything and anyone.
I see the parallels.
Yes, but nowhere is that sort of like the sexism implicit there more blatant than in the Iron Islands. I mean, these people drag off salt wives from their villages.
Yes, that's true.
Enslave them.
Yeah.
Now, Asha is different, though. She is different. She does things expected of the ruler of the Iron Islands.
Right.
And presumably Gwyneth never did. Gwyneth was presumably not that kind of person. Asha is a one-off. It is hard to imagine enough captains being sufficiently enlightened to elevate her, though.
I agree. And I think that the offer that Rodrik makes of naming her his heir of 10 towers is no small offer. She discounts it very quickly because she has her eyes set on the bigger prize of the Seastone Chair. But, just to be clear, he's not offering her the rule of Harlaw just to be Lady of Castle 10 Towers. But still, it's definitely a big step up from ship captain, and it gives her significant clout. It would very much change her lot compared to, as you said, most of the women in the Iron Islands.
But if I wondered about the specifics of the offer he made to her. If he gives her the castle, what does his heir get?
His heirs are
Harlaw
dead.
Hall?
Well, yeah.
Oh, but so who's going to be the Harlaw of Harlaw when he
The
dies?
one they call the Knight. Rodrik mentions it. He will become the Lord of Harlaw. That's why.
But he already has his own castle.
Yes, he can rule from
I
his
see.
castle. Asha will just take 10 towers. But now, of course, this is, hinges upon the other Iron Islanders respecting Rodrik's decision after his death. They could turn around and say, "Nope, sorry, we're not going to have a woman be the lady of a castle."
Yes, I believe there are precedents in the law of Westeros for
Yes,
that exact same thing happening.
Yeah, very much so. Yes.
And actually, I was going to mention that as an aside. One of the themes that runs through all of George Martin's writings in the world of A Song of Ice and Fire is the questions of primogeniture. It just comes up again and again and again.
It sure does.
All of House of the Dragon is basically based on that, and this
Yep.
is another example right here.
Yeah,
and,
very true.
And Gwyneth reminds me a lot of Rhaenys Targaryen. Am I getting that name right?
Yeah.
Because Gwyneth was never promised anything the way Rhaenys was, but Rhaenys wasn't promised anything, was she? She lost in a fair vote.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
Asha's mother, Alanis, cuts a tragic figure. She wandered Pike looking for her 2 dead sons, and that's before Asha is going to bring her the news of Theon's death. So it's going to be very sad for her to learn of this.
Yes.
Doesn't seem she's particularly mourning for Balon's death, though.
No, not so much.
Yeah, and I don't know. I was saving this up for pedantry, but I'll ask it now. She was already here before Balon's death.
Right.
She was already ensconced in her family home of 10 Towers, not on Pike with her husband.
Yeah.
Is there a reason for that?
I want to say it was for health reasons that she went back to 10 Towers.
She was frail.
Yes.
Pike looks really horrible.
Yes. But Alanis Harlaw, Asha mentions that there's already 2 daggers in her heart for the death of her other 2 sons, Marlon and Rodrik. Yeah. Now we've got a 3rd son who is presumed dead, and Theon. All 3 were lost when her husband Balon tried to play king.
Mm.
And so Meryn and Rodrik were killed during the first Greyjoy Rebellion. But Theon was also lost in the first Greyjoy Rebellion. Yeah. He was lost physically to her as a hostage. Now in the second rebellion, it's looking like he's been lost for good.
I'll put 100% of the blame on the first 2 at Balon's feet. But Theon brought a lot of this on himself by his stupid decisions. Asha came back fine.
Right, yeah. That is certainly a case you could make right there.
Yeah. Rodrik seems like a wise counselor, and he's right that the history of the Kingsmoots don't bode well. The victor doesn't always forgive the vanquished and those who vote against them.
Right.
But he also points out that the grasping for power is the rot at the root of the Iron Islands. If they would just stop doing that, if they would just stop trying to reproclaim themselves as kings, and instead work with the rest of the 7 kingdoms, they could find a way to live peace, harmony, and more wealth.
Yep, absolutely, yeah. He mentions about history repeating itself because human nature doesn't fundamentally change. And then, he says, it's not crowns we need, but land, and we have a golden opportunity here to be a part of either side. Pick a side. Just be a part of one of the side, and we'll reap the benefits of the victory. And we saw this happen in that Sansa chapter after the Battle of the Blackwater, when lands and titles were divvied up by the victors. And it's not like the Iron Islands don't have anything to offer. They have the largest fleet in the 7 kingdoms, so they could be very useful to the winning side, especially Stannis, considering he lost his entire fleet in the Battle of the Blackwater. So,
very true.
if the Lannisters were to win, they could possibly rule at least part of the North with the actual support of the crown instead of going against the crown. Now, Roose Bolton is also a Lannister man, and he's already been made Warden of the North. But maybe they could split. It's a big, vast area.
I mean, you're right, though. I mean, they could go either way. I mean, the Lannisters look like the safer bet right now, but you might get less from them because of that.
Yeah.
The Lannisters are like, we don't actually need you.
Right.
But Stannis might give you the whole of the North because he doesn't owe anything to Roose Bolton.
Exactly, yeah. Or he could give you some of the Western lands or all of the Western lands.
True enough. Yeah, they would like that.
Yeah, it's close to home.
They feel like the Westerlands look down their nose at them, right? So that would be a good coup for them.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And one thing I found noteworthy about this discussion is that Asha agreed with Rodrik that Balon had the wrong idea about how he went about trying to claim this land and pronounce himself king. And her thoughts were he was a brave man but a bad lord. So
right.
I thought, that's something I would not have expected her to think to herself.
Yeah, but that leads into what she left us with a bit of a cliffhanger there, because she sort of suggested that there was a third route somewhere between vying for full autonomy and being kings again and being thralls to the Iron Throne. And she says that she's going to reveal that at what she, and only she, refers to as the Queensmoot, but she should perhaps stop calling it the Queensmoot if her plan is to find some middle ground,
right.
Yes, the Prime Minister moot.
Yeah. I've got some plans, some things I want to discuss in the spoilers that have to do with such things.
Nice.
Well,
looking forward to that then.
I just wanted to say about Rodrik that I really liked him. He was an unusual and unique character as a voracious reader, Ironborn.
Yeah.
in a culture where book smarts are looked down upon and maesters are rare. And, here we have a High Lord bookworm. Who would have seen that coming, Yep. So I thought that was pretty neat. And
he even sort of, I don't know if he was still there, but they've had septons there, but that was for the reading, for the books that they brought with them, less than for the religion, which they did not agree with.
Yes, right, yeah. And the book that he was reading when Asha came in was called The Book of Lost Books. And it was written by Archmaester Marwyn. And if you're thinking that name's kind of familiar, it's because we've been hearing of him.
He went to Essos.
He did go to Essos, yes. We heard Miri Mazdor say that she studied anatomy under him. And Pate and friends from the prologue of this book, they talked about him. And he had a burning glass candle in his
glass candles.
chamber.
That's what I was going to say. Look at me.
They call him the Mastiff or the Mage. And Qyburn told Jaime that only Marwyn considered Qyburn's ideas on the afterlife. So, yeah, we've been hearing about him from time to time throughout the story.
We've discussed Euron's fortunate timing previously and suggested that, he probably had something to do with Balon's death. But this, remind me again, this is the Ghost of High Heart's prophecy, right?
Yeah. Back when Arya was hearing this prophecy, she had said that she dreamt of a man without a face waiting on a bridge that swayed, and on the man without a face's shoulder was a drowned crow with seaweed hanging from his wings. Mm-hmm. And we thought, boy, that sounds a lot like a faceless man who are hired assassins. Mm-hmm. And the crow with seaweed sounds an awful lot like Euron Crow's Eye. So we made that conjecture. But conveniently, Silence, his Euron ship, was still out at sea when Balon was killed and didn't arrive till the next day. So clearly, he couldn't have been involved, right?
That's true.
Plausible
can
deniability.
Men swim?
They give him a little dinghy to row in on. Yeah.
So we hear more rumors of what Euron's up to. He's lavishing bribes. He's definitely suspected in Balon's death, but there are also rumors of him dabbling in magic and having creatures that are considered mythical at his disposal. So yeah, he's been up to something. It'd be. I wonder if we'll get to meet him at the Kingsmoot when he steps aside in favor of his niece.
Yeah, we shall see how that all plays out. There's things in spoilers that I want to bring up about all that, but for now, we'll just have to wait and see. But about Euron and the Kingsmoot, at first glance, you might wonder, why would Euron go along with the Kingsmoot when he's already seated on the Seastone Chair? Possession is 9/10 of the law, as that saying goes. But what we know is that he's got this extensive treasure for bribery. So, why not go along with it if you're feeling pretty confident that you can just bribe your way to getting the votes you need? If you don't show up, the majority could rally around a competitor in enough force to remove you.
And then you've got a civil war on your hands.
Yes, but if you show up bearing gifts, at the very least, you keep things muddled, which favors you because you're already sitting on the Seastone Chair.
Very true, very true. I wonder, I mean, we want our characters to do the bold thing, but Rodrik's offer of being heir to the Ten Towers, combined with Christopher Botley's profession of love, does offer Asha a kind of a nice fallback, really. I mean, she gets tired of murdering and reaving. She could perhaps get married and settle down in the biggest castle on the biggest and wealthiest island of the Iron Islands, with a man who loves her.
Yeah, I think it's second to Great Wyk in size, but it's the wealthiest and most populated.
Oh, it's the wealthiest. Okay, that's right. Wealthiest and most populated. You're correct. Yeah. Sorry.
No, you're absolutely right. Just like we were talking earlier, that coupled, with the 10, Christopher Botley's professed love and the offer from Rodrik of 10 towers, they can make a name for themselves on the island.
Exactly. There'd be a power couple. I mean, and if Euron's as rotten as he might be, then his tenure as Lord of the Iron Islands might not be very nice for people, even the people he bribed to get there.
Right.
Yeah. And so maybe they'll start to draw sort of, adherence to them, and maybe they depose him down the line. Right.
Yeah. And about Christopher Botley, if the name Botley sounds familiar, again, we've had dealings with them in the past. Theon 1 of A Clash of Kings. They're lords on Pike, lords of Lordsport, which is on the opposite side of Pike from Castle Pike, where the Greyjoys have their seat. Lord Sawain, which is Triss's father, he's the one that sold Theon his horse Smiler.
Horse, right, yes.
And Theon's squire, Wex Pike, is a Botley bastard. So that's
good info.
Why we've been hearing about this name from time to time.
And just as a reminder that Asha isn't really all sweetness and light, she did bring back Lady Glover and her children as prisoners, hopefully for ransom, not to be kept in slavery forevermore, but pretty rough on them, I would say.
Yeah, although, what did you think? Did you think her concern for their well-being to be a little bit surprising, that she wanted to make sure they didn't want for warmth, they were to be fed well with warm food, and that they needed a wet nurse because the baby wasn't feeling well, and Lady Glover's milk had dried up?
I hadn't given it a second thought, but now you've raised a very valid point. It's almost like an honored guest rather than a prisoner.
Yes, she said, put them in a tower, not in the dungeons.
Right.
Now, I wondered if it was just the general respect given to high-born lords and ladies, especially ones with babies, or if possibly this was a woman-to-woman thing, Asha to Lady Glover.
Yeah.
I wondered...
She's not Balon. She's not Euron.
Right. I wondered whether a male captor would have the same level of concern, and I guess, like with everything, I mean, it depends. Depends on the person, you know?
Yeah. I think the other thing to mention is that there would be concern for the well-being of the baby because that would cause problems if things go against you down the line. If the Glovers somehow get back into significant power and come in force and one of them is dead, they're not going to be very forgiving of that, I feel.
Right.
So there is a bit of self-preservation, perhaps.
And also, you know, like you said, she might need Glover's support someday, including with the small folk if she hopes to hold Deepwood Motte permanently.
Very true.
The final thing I'll say about this is there's more I want to say about it in spoilers.
Excellent. All right, well, it's time for spoilers. The spoilers section is available to our higher tiers of our Buy Me a Coffee sustainers. So if you're interested, sign up and you'll get to hear what we're about to talk about. That's perfect. All right, do you have some background for us?
I do. Well, since 2 characters in this chapter lost loved ones off Fair Isle, it seems prudent to explain what that's in reference to. So Rodrik Harlaw lost his 2 sons, and his elder sister, Gwyneth, lost her husband during a battle fought in the Straits of Fair Isle. The battle took place during the previous Greyjoy Rebellion. Now, Fair Isle is an island just off the western coast of Westeros. To kick off the Greyjoy Rebellion, the first one, Balon had his brothers Euron and Victarion burn the Lannister fleet at Lannisport, diminishing the naval force available to King Robert. In response, Robert had Stannis command the royal fleet to deal with the Iron Fleet. Stannis was supported by fleets from Arbor, Old Town, and the Reach, and Stannis managed to trap Victarion in the Iron Fleet in the Straits of Fair Isle by pinning them in from the north and south. Stannis and the royal fleet then smashed the Ironborn. This battle is not only where Rodrik's sons and Gwyneth's husband died, but also where Aeron Damphair's ship, the Golden Storm, was sunk, which caused him to wash up on shore and be captured by the Lannisters, and ultimately leading to his rebirth and becoming a fervent follower of the drowned god.
Consequential battle for everybody involved.
It is. Was.
All right. Comparison with the television show, none of this chapter is kept. The whole Iron Island story is pushed way later in the show. Most of what we've been reading about in Feast for Crows is in season 5 of Game of Thrones. But Balon is still alive in season 6, episode 2.
Oh.
Balon still lives.
Okay. I bet he's happy about that.
Well, he was. I mean, no, he was miserable about it. But just before his death, Yara, who is Asha, confronts him about the stupidity of their trying to hold the North. He is belligerent and threatens to name another heir, implicitly implying that she is his heir.
Okay, yeah.
But in the very next scene, he dies. But nobody else knew that, you know. So in the book, Damphair knows it, but in the show, only Asha, well, Yara, she was called in the show.
Right. I see the distinction. That's a big distinction right there.
Yeah. At Balon's funeral, I'm just going to call her Asha. Asha swears revenge on the Salt Throne, as it's called in the show, not the Seastone Chair. But Aeron, Damphair, says that it's not hers to swear on, that there must be a Kingsmoot. So in the TV show, it's made that the Kingsmoot is the normal rite of succession, not a special event, not a once-in-a-lifetime experience.
I'd say more than once in a lifetime. They were saying 2,000 to 4,000 years.
Yes. So in researching this, I did actually discover that they included Balon's murder. You actually see Balon's murder, and it's Euron does it. I mean, I'm just going to tell you, Euron does it. That's the TV show's version of it. Right. Euron is on the bridge and pushes him off. I think that's partly because Euron was not banished, was not exiled. He was just off gallivanting.
Okay.
And so it would be more difficult to pin the guilt on him if he just happened to come back at the same time. But if he'd been banished by Balon and came back the day Balon dies, it looks pretty obvious that he's involved.
Yes, it does.
Yeah. So I think that's what they just wanted to make that guilt obvious. So he absolutely does it. No question about it.
Okay. Good stuff.
Pedantry. Do you have anything?
Just one little thing. So Asha says to Rodrik, "Do you believe my father was murdered?" And he says, "Your mother does." And we have not met Alanis yet, but we've heard descriptions of her from Asha, and I found it a little bit hard to accept someone who still thinks of Theon as a baby and who is described as in such poor health and just so mentally deficient at this point, I guess.
Such poor health that Asha thought she would never see her again when she went off to the north.
That she has the cognition to think, no, this is not as it seems. He was murdered. I didn't quite buy it.
Yeah, but the counter argument is everyone thinks it's yours, surely.
Well, yeah, except for, Rodrik says he's willing to accept it as...
Right, but possibly trying to be the voice of reason,
Maybe trying to keep Asha from going off and, starting a civil war. But, yeah, I just thought she seems like she's, maybe a bit delusional, or, she thinks that her adult son is still a baby, and I just didn't. I pictured her as someone who no longer has the mental capability to put together conspiracies like that. So that's all.
Yeah. All right. Do you have some news and notes?
Well, I do. Well,
can I take this first one, because this is interesting to me, because I like board games.
I do. Yeah, go right ahead.
Are you looking forward to the House of the Dragon season 2? It debuts in June, I think.
Yes.
Do you love tedious, boring, never-ending board games? The answer to that question, Mackelly, is no, I don't actually. I like good board games.
I know you do.
So, but if you happen to fall into that other camp, you're in luck. The House of the Dragon Monopoly game is available in stores and online. So forget Park Place and Boardwalk, and for our British viewers, forget Mayfair and Park Lane. They're the top two.
Oh, okay, good to know.
You can buy Driftmark, Dragonstone, and of course Harrenhal. Oh, that would be the one. I hope Harrenhal is like at least past free parking. Dollars have been replaced by coins, and obviously game pieces are House of the Dragons themed. Oddly, free parking is still there with a picture of the car.
It feels like an oversight. I don't get it. I saw the board. There's still free parking with a little car. It's like, what's that doing there?
The game box and board look really cool, so I considered buying it. This is Mackelly saying, so I'd consider buying that I'd consider buying it for that alone. It's currently $35 on Amazon. If you've got that kind of money, become a sustainer at buymeacoffee.com.
I agree.
Because Monopoly remains a terrible game.
I have never enjoyed the game of Monopoly. Just never have.
No, it's a terrible game. It's terrible.
I don't really know anybody who likes Monopoly.
I love board games, but Monopoly is just... Yeah. And that's the reason I love board games is because of how good they've become. People have actually now built and designed really fun board games, which had they existed when I was a child, I would have loved board games then.
Right, yeah. And maybe Monopoly wouldn't have made it off the ground if it had more competition. Anyway, in other news... We've had our Buy Me a Coffee Sustainer chat by now. We haven't yet, but we will by the time you hear this.
Okay, thank God.
Well,
I thought I'd missed it.
Except for our Buy Me a Coffee Sustainers, because they get it a day early. So they'll be getting it.
Super confusing.
Yes, it's getting complicated. Anyway, one thing I can guarantee you is that it was a great time, because it always is.
For sure.
Yes, so... So I urge you to come join us for the next one. Join our Buy Me a Coffee Sustainership, and you can see how much fun we have at those chats.
And we got a review on Apple Podcasts from Boom Boom Coombs. Good stuff. Love the recaps and perspectives, especially helpful during a reread. Hook it up with a shout out on the show, please. Y'all are the best. Well, there you are, Boom Boom Coombs. You have had a shout out on the show.
Shout out given. And hey, if anybody else wants their review shouted out, go leave us a 5-star rating and a nice review on Apple Podcasts or wherever else you can leave a review, and we will do just that.
All right, let's conclude. So Asha is determined to make the Kingsmoot a Queensmoot, despite heartfelt and not not completely unsagacious advice from her uncle Rodrik.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think Rodrik had a great line summing up Feast for Crows here in this chapter when he says, "We had one king, then 5. Now I only see crows squabbling over the corpse of Westeros." Mm-hmm. And I thought, you know what? This book is called Feast for Crows, and here he is kind of spelling it out for us right there. And
then on a slightly smaller scale, we've got one crow feasting on the carcass of the Iron Islands very soon, I fear.
Right. Well, at least one crow's eye, anyway.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
But the image that Rodrik painted there kind of reminded me of the vision Dany had in House of the Undying with the beautiful naked woman being ravaged by 4 little men. You recall that? The kings ravaging the beautiful land that is Westeros.
Right.
I'll say this, if winter comes and harvests aren't stored, there might be a lot more corpses on the way.
True. Maybe not even enough for the crows.
Yeah. But there's still no confirmation on Theon's fate.
But everyone believes he's dead. I mean, that seems to be... I mean, Asha is going to tell Theon's mother that Theon is dead, despite not being absolutely sure and knowing what it's going to do to her mother as well.
Yeah, maybe she could put that off. There's no harm in that, is there? I don't know. Yeah. Maybe not. But Asha tells us that they were in Winterfell and there were plenty of corpses, but they were indistinguishable due to the 4-legged wolves having eaten them. So
right. And of course, I mean, he would have been a slightly prized prisoner. So it is possible he was taken from there.
Agreed. But if he was taken hostage, you figure the Greyjoys would have heard a ransom demand by now, right? I mean,
presumably.
But who is the biggest threat to the Crow's Eye's plan of King of the Iron Islands? Might he consider that it was Balon's only living son? So could Crow's Eye be involved in Theon's fate being such a mystery?
Let me spitball your idea here. Euron sitting in the Seastone Chair. The first raven arrives from outside. It's a ransom note for Theon, and he slowly sticks it in his mouth and chews it and swallows it, and Theon's never heard of again. Yes,
could be. Yeah, that's
one's the wiser.
Great conjecture right there. I hadn't really actually thought about how it might work out, but yes, that could be something like that. Yeah. Yeah. Now, we know the Ghost of Highheart led us to believe that Euron hired a faceless man to kill Balon, so possibly he sent a faceless man to kill Theon as well.
It feels like the faceless men... Yeah. Faceless men like do the thing and then they hang around tapping their foot for the next thing. It's like,
right. Huh? Anybody else? Is anyone else dead yet?
My nephew's Theon. Nobody knows where he is. Make sure. Good luck. So Euron's machinations look likely to carry him to victory. His claim is strong, but his banishment might have weighed against him. Perhaps if Aeron, Damphair, and Victarion both argue against him, that might be enough to get the lords to...
Again, I think part of the problem could be Asha and Victarion. If they don't decide to form a block, then they're cutting their votes in half.
It's exactly what happened with the Lord Commander of the Night's Watch. And,
I was just thinking...
Almost got Janos Slynt into power, which would have been ridiculous.
Yes, right. Exactly. Yeah, you got to be careful with that third-party stuff.
Yeah, and Asha is a bit of a porcupine when it comes to love. I mean, she literally drew blood.
Yes, she did.
And poor Christopher, whose name is the perfect first name for a scorned lover. If ever there was a name to be a scorned lover, it is Christopher.
Yes, Triss. Old Triss. Yeah, it was kind of a sad, awkward encounter, and Asha early on in the chapter called that one. She said, "Oh, this is going to be awkward."
Yeah.
Turns out he's been saving himself for her all these long years, and she not so much.
And didn't shirk from telling him that.
No.
Either.
He thinks they're soulmates. She's not the least bit interested in marrying him. And of course, it ends with her dirk at his throat. I'm your queen, not your wife. Remember that. So bit awkward and sad, really.
Well, next time we'll be back in King's Landing to check on our other favourite queen.
That's right. Who could that be?
There's 4 ways that you can help us. You could leave us a positive review, as Boom Boom Coombs did. You could buy merchandise at ghostsofharrenhal.threadless.com. You should check it out. There's some cool things there, including designs by our own Jenny of Oldstones.
That's right.
You could buy us a cup of Arbor Gold at buymeacoffee.com/ghostsharrenhal. And there you can join us at any of the various sustainer levels. There's a tier to match your budget. The upper tiers get you the spoilers. Or you can just make a donation to our cause at ghostsofharrenhal.buzzsprout.com.
And if you're looking for more ways to interact with us, keeping up on the latest Ghosts of Harrenhal news and developments, well, I advise you go check us out on our social media. You can follow us on Twitter at Ghosts Harrenhal. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Discord, and YouTube.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.